Hey guys, welcome back. In the previous Java video tutorial, I discussed control structures, and one of them that I focused on was the selection structure, where I used if statements using single selection, double selection, and multiple selection. And this is the code I came up with. Now, to tell you frankly, there is a little bit of a problem here. Okay, let me show you what that problem is. Now, me as a teacher, I don't give a grade that is greater than 100 or that is less than 100. Okay, I always give my students a grade in between 0 and 100. But this code accepts an input that is greater than 100 and less than 0. Now let me show you what I'm talking about. Okay, so for example, the input is 101. The grade that the user enters is 101, and C, the output is A. This computer displays an A, but it doesn't make sense, right? How about the negative number? How is it handled? It is accepted, right? Computer accepts -5 as a grade of a student, and well, in fact, the computer displays an F. So how to fix this little problem here? Now I have a few solutions in mind. Now the first solutions that I'm thinking is I'm going to add two more if statements. Why two? One is to handle the grade that is greater than 100, and the other if statement will handle the grade that is less than 0. Okay, so let me start with the grade that is greater than 100, and if this Boolean expression returns true, so computer prints an invalid input message. Okay, makes sense. Now I should have another one to handle the grade that is less than 0. Okay, let me just change this to less than 0. And again, if this Boolean expression returns true, then this line here will be executed. Okay, so I think the problem is handled, well, not really, because as you can see here, I am using 3 single selection statements, right? So like what I explained in the previous video tutorial, this is not a good idea. This is not a good way of handling this, right? So what I should be using is since these are 3, so I would be using multiple selection. Okay, so instead of using just if in the second if statement, I will be using else if instead, and so for the third. So if the grade is, for example, 105, this will be executed, and this will not be executed, because if you don't use else if for this statement, for this Boolean expression, also A will be displayed if the grade is 105, for example. So there are two conditions that will be satisfied if you don't write the else in the third if. Now to show you if I'm right, let me just delete the else for the third if, just to show you my points. Okay, so for example, the grade is 101. So if the grade is 101 and I have 2 single selection if statement, so these 2 single if statements will be satisfied. They will return true. Okay, because grade is 101 and 101 is greater than 100, so it returns true. So this line over here, this line will be executed, and so this if statement will be evaluated also, because it's a single selection if statement. So since grade is 101, so 101 is greater than 90, so this Boolean expression returns true, and so this line will be executed as well. So to show you that. So 101 is entered. Just press enter key. See, I have 2 lines of output here. Invalid input, and yet A is displayed. Doesn't make sense, right? So that's why we rather use multiple selection here, so that if the first if statement is satisfied, if the first condition is satisfied, if the first Boolean expression rather returns true, the rest, everything that follows that, will be ignored. Okay, now let's see if it works. Okay, so again, greater than 100. So it's just invalid input, no A. Okay, because of what we used here, multiple selection statements. Okay, now the first solution is proven that it is working, but let's go back to the code. Okay, do you notice something? If you notice these 2 system out print line statements, do they look the same to you? Yeah, they look the same. I mean, wow, really? Similar, not just similar, they are the same, right? This and this are in 2 different if statements, right? If grade is greater than 100, then print invalid input. If the grade is less than 0, then print invalid input. So my idea is, why not combining these 2 expressions here? Why not combining them as one, right? Instead of having 2 different if statements. Well, in fact, they do the same thing, right? So in order for me to combine 2 or more conditions or Boolean expressions, I will be needing a special, or what we call another set of operators, and that is what we call logical operators. And in programming, we have 3 logical operators. What are those logical operators? The first one, we have 3 actually. The first one is what we call AND. The second one is what we call OR. And the third one is what we call NOT. And in Java, you cannot write the word AND. If you want to use logical operator AND, we can use ampersand, single, or double. Okay, I will explain what the difference is later. And then the second one is OR. How can we write OR in Java? Now we can use a special character bar, single or double. And in Java, NOT is written as an exclamation point. Okay, so these are the 3 logical operators that we can use. I mean, actually there are 2. Okay, and it's either and or both sometimes. If we want to combine multiple Boolean expressions or if conditions. Okay, well, NOT is used if you want to reverse, if you want to not the Boolean expressions value, return value. Okay, I will show you how to use NOT later, but now I'm going to focus on the first 2 logical operators here, the AND and the OR. Now, to show you how to use them, let me use this simple code. Here, I created 2 variables. I named them X and Y, and their data types are Boolean, of course, because I initialized them to false. Okay. Now, if I print this, okay, what do you think will be displayed? Since it's a Boolean expression, right? This is a Boolean expression, and Boolean expressions returns either true or false. Now, if you are using AND, it's like multiplication, okay? And false, it's like a 0 in math, okay? It's like a 0 in math. And true, it's like a 1 in mathematics, okay? So let me just make myself clear here. Okay, so I'm gonna have what you call this, a comment here, that when you say false, it means 0, and when you say true, it means 1. Okay, in programming. Okay, now since x is initialized to false, so I'm talking about, it's like x is equal to 0, right? It's like x is equal to 0. And if I initialize y to, if I initialize false to y, if I assigned rather false to y, it's like y is equal to 0. If I initialize x to false, to true rather, it's like I am assigning 1 to x. If I initialize y to true, it's like I am assigning 1 to y. So again, false, it's like 0, and a true, it's like a 1. Okay, in programming. So here I have a printing statement here. Okay, I want to print the return value of this Boolean expression here. Remember guys, if you are using AND, it's like you are multiplying. Okay, if you multiply 0 by 0, then the output is 0. The answer, the result is 0. Here we are ANDing x, which is false, with y, which is also false. So in math, 0 times 0 is equal to 0. So I'm expecting that this program displays false later, right? Because I am ANDing, this is an AND operator, I am ANDing false with false. So false and false is equal to false. So this Boolean expression, also known, we can call this operand, okay? This Boolean expression will return false because x is equal to false and y is equal to false. And is like multiplication. Okay, it's like multiplication. So x multiplied by y, 0 multiplied by 0, false multiplied by false is false. Okay, that's what I want to see later when I run this code. And then the next line here, I reinitialized y to true. So again, this is like 0 assigned to x, and this is like 1 assigned to y. Okay, I hope you're still with me. So if I display the return value of this Boolean expression, what would I see? What do you think will I see later if I run this? So x again is 0 because it's false, and I ANDed it with y, which is equal to true or 1. So in math, if you multiply 1 by 0, you will get 0, and in Java, 0 is false, right? Okay, are you still with me? I hope so. And then the next line, I reinitialized x to true, and I reinitialized y to false. So this time, true is assigned to x and false is assigned to y. So again, let's use numbers here. Let's use another representation to true, which is 1, and let me use another representation to false, which is 0. So it's like I am assigning 1 to x and I am assigning 0 to y. So if you use that in a Boolean expression like this one, what do you think this Boolean expression returns? If I multiply 1 by 0, of course in math the result is 0, so it will display a literal value false, okay, when I run this code later. And then the next line, I still x is equal to true, so it's like it's like 1 is assigned to x, and I reinitialized y to true, so it's like 1 is assigned to y. So if I run this code, what do you think this Boolean expression returns? 1 multiplied by 1 in math, it will return true. 1 multiplied by 1, the answer is true. So I expect that this Boolean expression here will return true later. So are you ready to see the output? Is it really true that the first sysout print line returns displays false? The second printing statement returns displays false. The third also displays false, and the last displays true. Okay, let's see. There you go, right? So false, the first system that print line prints false, which is correct. The second one that I said that it would be printing false, which is correct. The second line displays false. And then I also said a while ago that this Boolean expression here would return false and will be printed, which is true. The third line that is printed here is false, and then the last line that is printed here is true. So what can you say about the use of AND? What do you think? Can you give the definition for the AND logical operator? What do you think? So the returned expression, the returned Boolean expression, the return value of the Boolean expression is 1 or true if and only if all the operands are true, right? So the only result here that is true is when all the variables are initialized to true. If one of the variable is initialized to false, then the Boolean expression returns false, right? So the only time the Boolean expression returns true is when all the operands are true. Okay? If one of them is false, then everything is false. Even though x in here, even though x is true and y is false, still the return value is false. Okay? So that's the meaning of AND logical operator. How about the OR? Now, OR, it's like the opposite of the AND. Here, the first initial values of x and y is false. Okay, x is initialized to false, and y is initialized to false. So again, it's like I am assigning 0 is assigned to x, and it's like 0 is assigned to y. Okay, so by the way, OR it's like addition. If AND, it's like multiplication, or it's like addition. Okay, so here again, x is initialized to false and y is initialized to false. So if I ORed false to another false, of course 0 plus 0 is 0. The return is false or 0, right? And then the next line is I am assigning still false to x, and I am changing the value of y to true. So again, it's like 0 is assigned to x, and 1 is assigned to y. Now in math, if you add 1 to 0, the output, the result is 1, right? So it's the same thing in programming. If you OR 0 to 1, then the output is 1. So it's gonna be true, right? So this Boolean expression returns true because 0 plus 1, and 0 is false, plus true, so the result is true. Okay? Now the next line, the next two lines, again x I reinitialize to true and y is reinitialized to false. So it's like 1 is assigned to x, and this it's like 0 is assigned to 0 to y. So let's go to this Boolean expression here. It's like addition. So if I OR x to 0, if I OR true to false, then the result is true. Okay, so in math, if you add 1 to 0, the result is 1. And in programming, 1, it's like true. Okay, then the next two lines followed by that statement, following that statement, is x is still true and y is reinitialized to true. So this line, it's like I am assigning 1 to x, and here still 1 is assigned to to y, sorry. Okay, so in math, 1 plus 1 is 2, but not in programming. Okay, in programming, 1 plus 1 is 1. Okay, so here in Boolean expression, I'm talking about Boolean expression, Boolean data type. So in Boolean expression, true or true is true. Okay, it's a bit different from math. In Boolean expression, in Boolean, okay, make sure you understand that I'm talking about Boolean data types here. In Java, in any other programming languages, if you OR true to true, the output, the result is true. Okay, so what do you notice here? There's only one false, the output of false here, right? So when will the return data type becomes true? If at least one of the Boolean variable is true, then the result is true. If the only time the result of a Boolean expression is false, it's because if both operands are false. But here, there's one operand, which is y, that is true, so the result is true. Here, the operand that is true is x, so the result is true. And this, they are both true, so of course, definitely, the result is true. Okay, so again, in OR, the only time the result becomes false, the result is false, is when both operands, all operands are true, false. If one of the operands is true, then the result of the Boolean equation is Boolean expression is true. I hope I made myself clear. Okay, now let's go back to this simple code here. Okay, now since I want to combine these two if conditions here, I want to combine this two logic Boolean expressions here. So I don't have to do these lines. Okay, I don't have to do these two lines over here. I can do it once, just when I combine, okay, these two Boolean expressions here. So the next question is, what do you think? What logical operator should I use to combine these two conditions here? Again, invalid input is displayed if and only if the grade is greater than 100 or the grade is less than 0. It cannot be both, right? A grade cannot be greater than 100 and at the same time less than 0. That is impossible. It could be only one, right? It could be greater than 100 or less than 0. So obviously I have to use the logical operator OR, not AND. Okay, so let me put this up there. Okay, let me put that here so I can delete these two lines here. Okay, so my line now is a little bit more efficient compared to the last version of it. Okay, so here the only time invalid input is displayed is when this becomes true or this becomes true. Okay, either of the two. Now let's see if this idea works. Okay, so if I input 101, yes, it is invalid. Another one, negative value, -5. Let's say, for example, yes, it is working still. So by using a logical operator, or I managed to do this once, okay, before it was done twice. Again, logical operators and or are used if you decide to combine several if conditions, if you want to combine several Boolean expressions. Okay, now this is one Boolean expression that will return true or false, and this is another Boolean expression that would return either true or false. So in this case, if the grade is greater than 100, let's say 101, so which of the two Boolean expressions would return true? This one, right? And this would return false because 101 is not less than 0. But it's okay. The whole thing still returns true because we're using OR, and by definition, if at least one of the two Boolean expression is true, it returns true. So that's why this whole thing here returns true. That's why the invalid input is displayed on the screen. Right? Let's try another input, negative. If the user enters -3, which of the two operands, which of the two Boolean expression will return true? Is -3 greater than 100? No, so this returns false, right? This returns false. And how about this? -3 less than 0? True. So this Boolean expression returns true. So false or false returns true, like what I showed you here. False, look at this block here. Look at this part. So false, x is false, and we OR it to true, is still this Boolean expression here returns true, right? So here we go. So this solution works. Okay, now I'm thinking of another solution, right? We can use AND instead of OR here, right? And how to do that? Now let me put this down there. Let me put that option down here. So invalid inputs will be displayed if all these okay, are not satisfied. If the grade is not greater than 90 or equal to 90, if the grade is not greater than or equal to 80, if the grade is not greater than or equal to 70, if the grade is not greater than or equal to 60, and the grade is not greater than or equal to 0, so definitely the grade, the input rather, is invalid. The grade that is entered by the user is invalid, right? So if these if conditions return false, so that's the time the computer displays this message, invalid input. But I have to use another logical operator here, and what I'm talking about is the AND operator. Now, AND operator, or the Boolean expression, returns true if and only if all operands, all values are equal to true. Okay, so that's the thing. How can I make A displayed on the screen if the grade is between 90 and 100 inclusive? So I have a range of values here, right? So if the score or the grade is greater than or equal to 100, so these two operands here, which happen to be Boolean expressions, are true, I mean satisfied or return true, then that's the time computer displays a grade of A. Okay, so I have a range here, and if you have a range of values, then you must use AND logical operator here. Okay, so I have to do this also to the rest. I'm sorry, I have to copy paste to make it faster. Okay, so this would be 89, and then this should be 79, and this should be 69. This should be from 0 to 50. Okay, so now my second solution is done. Okay, but done differently. So by using AND operator. Let me rerun the code. I'm sorry. Okay, let me rerun it. If I type 101, for example, it's supposed to print invalid. Yes, it did. It printed invalid. Yes. If I enter -4, for example, invalid input is displayed. How about 99? Yes, A is displayed. How about 90? A is displayed. How about 70? It's supposed to be a C. It is, right? Okay, so I think our code is working properly this time. Now let's just go back to logical operators, because there are two varieties, a single ampersand and a double. Now let me just explain how it works. Let me just go to this example here. Again, in AND, if you're using AND and at least one of the operands, one of the Boolean value is false, the rest is false, the return value is false. So even though let's go to the one with a true value. Let's use this portion here. Now x is false, so in other words, if at least one of these two is false, then the return value is false. So the reason why at CPP we're using double ampersand is because if the first is false, the rest will be ignored. The computer doesn't care. The computer won't evaluate what y is. Okay, it's either true or false. The return value is false anyway. So if one is already false, if the first Boolean expression, if the first Boolean value is false, if the first operand gives false, returns false, then the rest, if you have more than one, if there are still 99 remaining, those are considered false because we are using short circuit. It is called short circuit AND operator. Okay, that's why at CPP we use two ANDs. It's because it's short circuit. If one is false, the rest are considered false. No need for the computer to evaluate what they are. Okay, so if you use one AND, then even though x is false, still computer determines what y is. Is it true or false? See, no need to know what the value of y if x is already a false, right? So don't use AND as much as possible. Not unless if you want to know all Boolean expressions if they return true or false. But at CPP, again, we are using two ampersands as a short circuit because if one is false, it will return false anyway, so I don't care. Computer doesn't care what the remaining Boolean expressions return values are. Okay, and so for the OR, the reason why at CPP we use 2 bars as a short circuit, right? Because like what the definition says, if one is true, the rest is true. So let's try to use this portion here. So x is what is true. So this Boolean expression returns true. So computer doesn't care. The computer doesn't evaluate what the return value of y is, what the value of y is, because x is already true. So true or true, it's true. True or false, it's true. So whatever the remaining Boolean expressions, if there are still 99, for example, those 99 Boolean expressions will be considered as returning true because the first one is already true, right? So if you use only 1 bar, even though x is true, then computer evaluates what the value of y is, what the return data type, what the return value of this operand is. Okay, so that's why at CPP we use the shortcut one, which is the double bar, right? 2 bars. So I hope I gave justice to that. Okay, so I hope this would help you in so many ways. Till next time, bye bye.